Jason was this guy I met online this past summer. I'm 51 years old and I divorced a year prior after 27 years of marriage because my husband decided he wanted to be with someone younger that he ironically met online. I work from home in customer service taking calls for an insurance company. After my divorce, I didn't find myself lonely, but I did find myself needing to work on my self-esteem. Being left for a younger woman left me feeling inadequate. I threw myself into my job, working as much as possible to avoid the self-healing that I so desperately needed. I admit this is part of what led to me being romance scammed. I had joined a couple of fitness groups online, mostly targeted for women over 50 who want to kickstart a healthy lifestyle. I was on this quest to fix everything that was wrong with me, and I thought starting with my eating habits would be a great and easy way. The few groups I joined had men in them, but out of all the thousands of people in some of these groups, most of them were women. I would comment on recipes, fitness tips. Jason replied to a comment I made on some workout shoes that another female member posted. I had written saying that I thought of buying these certain type of shoes, but I was waiting for the price to be lowered. I can't recall my exact wording, but my comment indicated that financially I wouldn't pay the price tag on these expensive shoes. Jason replied and said he agreed with my comment, but he said something about treating myself luxury is always good. I replied to him with something about I'd rather pay my bills than pay for an expensive pair of shoes, and I laughed. Jason asked if we could be friends and requested I send him a friend's request. I checked his profile picture first and scrolled his timeline. He was handsome, and it looked like he had his life together just judging by his posts on his timeline. His profile timeline had several pictures of himself, pictures of a few cars, and his About section said he lived in New York, but was born in Denmark and worked for some kind of construction contracting. I sent him a request. I have around 400 friends on my friends list. Some of these people I've never talked to, some are family, and some are coworkers from the company I work for. But a lot of them I met in the fitness groups that I had joined online. Jason accepted my request right away, and then he sent me a message. He introduced himself, said he was 54 years old, a widow, and lived in New York, but was currently in the UK on a contract. He was an engineer working for this construction company. He asked about my job, where I lived, and said my profile picture was beautiful. I thanked him and asked why he was in a women's fitness group. He didn't answer me for a while, and soon I started getting notifications that all my photos were being liked by Jason. He went through all of my pictures and liked every single one of them. I messaged him and told him that he must be busy and to have a nice day because he didn't respond to my messages. I started my day at work, logging into my computer. When I'm working, I keep my phone on my desk on silent. I treat my work-at-home job just like I was in an office. On lunch break, I turn my phone back on to see tons of messages from Jason. He wrote paragraph after paragraph about his life. He said he was the only child of his parents and how he was born and raised in Denmark. He sent pictures of his house in New York and how he works on contracts overseas. He had asked if I was there, asked if I was busy. I didn't respond due to being at work. I responded to him and told him that I'm at work and now I'm on my lunch break. He said we need to stay in touch better and asked if I had another app to chat on. I told him no, but being on Messenger is no different than any other app. When I'm at work, I'm unable to call or text, and that I either put my phone on silent or I turn it off completely. Jason insisted I download another app to text and call each other. He said he's not always here. He messaged me his phone number and gave me a link to download another chat app. I told him I'd look into it, but I had to get back to work. I put my phone away and went back to work. After work, I came back to tons of messages from Jason, pictures of himself, saying he was going to sleep but thinking of me. He insisted again I download a chat app. Looking at his pictures, yes, he was handsome, but at first I found his aggressive demand for another chat app and paragraph after paragraph of his life a little strange. I don't think I spoke with him for a couple days, just life was busy. Jason then called me on Messenger. I didn't answer, and I don't remember why. I think I was busy and I might have been at the store. But anyway, he called several times and left messages asking what I was doing. I finally replied to him after a few hours, telling him I was working or at the store. I told him something. I told him I don't sit online day and night and that he must have a lot of time on his hands. Jason told me he was thinking of me and couldn't get me out of his mind. He asked if I downloaded the app yet. I finally went ahead and did it, and he and I started texting. He told me that I was on his mind, and I let him know that I work every day except for Sundays. He asked if I go to church on Sunday, and I told him no, that I am not religious, but Sunday is my day for doing my shopping and household chores. We started a routine where we would chat after work for a couple of hours. He told me his whole life story, where he grew up, his wife who had passed away, and a lot of personal things. And I don't know why, but I felt comfortable with him and how open he was with me. I compared him to my ex-husband, who was very distant to me in the later years of our marriage. It was completely different than what I was used to. I shared with him a lot of my life, shared with him the names of all my family members, where they lived. My goal, everything. And Jason supported me emotionally. He encouraged me. He told me that he was having a lot of attraction and feelings for me. He called me a few times at first, and then he started calling me nightly and sometimes before work. He said he was going to be in the UK for about 2 months on a contract before returning home. We had played with the idea of meeting at the airport when he returned. This man complimented me every morning. He wished me a good day at work. He talked to me for hours before bed, shared ideas. He said he wanted to retire from his work and open a restaurant with his bonus he was going to get. I love to cook, and he did too. We toyed with the idea of opening a restaurant together, and things were just perfect in my mind. Jason encouraged me to continue my fitness, eating right, working out. He said he went to the gym every morning, and he loved to swim. His encouragement meant a lot to me, and in the way he made me feel, he made me want to help myself to become a better, healthier version of me. He often talked about his work project, how he was tired of all the constant travel with his job and how he wanted to retire. How he was having issues with some of the workers there, and how he wanted to open this restaurant. He said he would consider selling his home in New York and moving to my state. We talked about opening a restaurant together, cooking together, enjoying life, travel, all sorts of things. Jason asked me to scout places for rent or for sale for a restaurant, to send him links to different places. He said as he was falling in love with me, he decided to write his retirement letter to his boss, and that this would be his last contract. He said the money he would receive from this contract would be used to open a restaurant. Jason was always loving towards me. He would tell me I was beautiful. He asked about my day, and when I had a bad day working, he was there for me. While my job wasn't hard, I had to deal with screaming upset people on a regular basis on the phone, and sometimes it chipped away at me and made me second-guess my ability, if I messed up on someone's account or name. Jason was there to tell me I was a good woman. He said he was finishing up his contract and showed me how much money he was going to get. I went on this search for a building for him to buy or rent for a restaurant and searched licensing and everything we would need. He told me he has a real estate contract to put his house up for sale in New York and was asking $1 million for his house. One night, Jason called me and confessed that he was totally in love with me and wanted to marry me. I wanted this, and I wanted this dream with him to open a restaurant, marry, and have this perfect life with this man who gave me so much love and attention. Jason told me that he found a building online that we can rent to buy. He gave me a few photos of the building, which was a former restaurant. It was 2 towns over from where I lived, and he said it would be perfect. He told me he already applied for a business license. And you see, we had this entire plan together. We had a restaurant name, a menu we would put together. The building rent was $3,800 a month, and Jason said the owner was willing to sell it after 1 year. I told Jason it would be perfect, and he said he was working with them to rent it. I told Jason that I'll go ahead and drive out to the building and have a look at it, but he told me not to. That he was having his assistant go to look and inspect it, and that he didn't want me to see it until we were together, as he was going to pay for the renovations and wanted me to see it once it's done or nearly done. Everything was going so well. Here was this man I was totally loving, and this whole dream was unfolding that he sold me. Jason said the building would be ours. I was designing menus for this restaurant, and he had sent me contracts between him and the building owner. Jason made me promise I wouldn't go look at the building until he came back to the States and would be with me. He was set to come home in 2 weeks and would fly to my nearest airport, and we would meet. He had by this time managed to win me over, get our business started, and we were both in love. I told a few close friends about the business plan, and they were very excited for me. I did, however, have one friend of mine show concern. She didn't understand online dating and how I could have so much trust in a man that I had not met in person. I told Jason that I had told some friends about us, and he wasn't very happy. He said he wanted to keep things a secret until we met in person and surprise everyone. I told him about this friend of mine who had her doubts. Jason told me that she was just jealous and to stop listening to her, and that she was trying to destroy our love, and that I should only believe in us together and no other people's opinions should matter. I actually started to distance myself from her only because of Jason and the negative feedback she would give me. Jason said the building was pretty much ours now and that the owner had him locked in a contract. It was a few days later when Jason called me crying and upset. He said the building owner did not receive Jason's down payment for the restaurant and that Jason's bank had an issue with the check. When I asked Jason what was going on, he said that his bank in New York had stopped payment on the check due to an account issue. He said his payroll check did not go through due to some system problems and he would have to show up at his bank in New York to verify a few things. I told Jason to just call his bank, but he said the branch manager told him he has to come in person to verify his identity due to some fraud alert. He suspects hackers or fraudsters, as he said, got into his account. Now he was distressed because the owner of the building is telling him that he will pull the contract and he will lose the building for our restaurant. Jason asked me if I could make the payment, and he would pay me back once he got to me. He was finishing up his work contract. The total payment for the first month's rent and deposit fees was $7,500. This was a huge chunk of money to me. Jason started crying more on the phone with me, telling me that he needed help so our restaurant dream would not slip away and that he had already paid the renovation workers money before his account had issues so he could secure them and start work on the building. Jason reinforced things by telling me how much he loved me and wanted to marry me, that he thought I was the most beautiful woman in the world. I didn't know what else to do and felt so much love for this man in our dream. We had spent days, weeks, hours upon hours planning our future that revolved around opening this restaurant. He had paid the business license fee and reminded me of how much money he had already invested in for us. I told Jason I would do it, but that I would be in a bind and that the money needed to be put back in my account as soon as he returned home. He thanked me and gave me the name of the man who owns the building, his bank information, and how to send the money. He said the man lives in Alabama but owned the building. I do not live in Alabama, but I am not far from that state. I do not wish to tell your viewers the state I am from for privacy. I told Jason I would pull out from my savings, and it was nearly everything I had in savings, but I did it for him. He told me to transfer the money from my bank to the building owner's bank and send him a copy of the transaction. He said the man would charge a $500 convenience fee, so I had to make the total transfer of $8,000. Well, I was able to transfer the money without any problem, as it was under $10,000. Anything above that would have triggered a waiting period and additional information from my bank. I showed Jason the transfer copy and information. He was so happy and said our life had just started and he would be flying home soon. Jason said he would fly to New York, then fly to me, and then together we would check the renovations on the building, and he had sent me a picture of some construction workers who he said were starting renovations. Jason then told me that he wanted to try some international dishes for the restaurant. We had agreed it would be a mix of dishes from all over. Jason said he had traveled to West Africa in the past and had fallen in love with the cuisine. He said there's a special list of spices he wanted to order from a market wholesaler in Nigeria that he would like to get. He said the spices are very hard to find and are often out of stock, but that the salesman in Nigeria had them this week, but Jason was still stuck finishing his contract, wasn't home yet, and couldn't fix his bank information. He told me the spices could be secured with a $200 deposit to the man who owns the market. He asked if I would be able to transfer $200 to the man who owns the spice market in Nigeria. I told him, well, we can wait until he's home and then order them once the restaurant was finished. He said he had to get them now as they might not be in stock when we're ready. I told him, well, we can order them online when we're ready from a different supplier. Jason became very upset with me and told me he needs to get them now and that I was being an unreasonable person. This was the first time we ever had an argument. Jason told me that I didn't believe in him and that he needed these spices ordered. Well, I finally gave in because I didn't want him upset with me and agreed to order the spices. He told me I could wire transfer $200 to this man in Abuja, Nigeria, and I did just that. I wired the money to him. When asked why at the transfer place, I told him it was for a food order. The cashier didn't bat an eye or question me at all. I let Jason know that the money was on the way and gave him the transfer number so he could verify and let the man know we ordered the spices. He said they would be mailed to my house. As time got closer, Jason said he was heading home to New York and then would come to me. The day came he boarded his flight from Heathrow to JFK. When he landed in JFK, he told me he was home in the state and heading to his house, which he said had a buyer for, and to fix his bank issue. Then he would fly to me in 3 weeks. Jason and I continued to call and talk every night. He said the restaurant was going very well and he couldn't wait for us to be together and open our dream restaurant. I reminded Jason to please transfer the money of $8,000 back to my bank account right away. He said he was dealing with the bank the next day and he would do just that. Jason took a photo and sent it to me, claiming he was waiting to talk to the bank manager. I went to work and, of course, on lunch, checked my messages and my bank account. My balance was the same, and I messaged Jason asking what was going on, that I'd not heard from him, which is very unusual. After work, I became concerned and started to call Jason, which I received no answer. I tried on the app, and always I had to get a hold of him, and I heard nothing. I thought maybe he got busy with getting his things in order to come here. Maybe he got delayed while dealing with the bank issue. When I didn't hear from him the next day, I became very worried. I checked my bank balance and it had not changed. I tried over and over to call him and it was met with no answer. He'd not been online either. After 3 days, I was worried sick. I missed work and spent my time trying to find him. I ended up calling the police in the town he said he lived in New York and explained the situation. I gave them his full name, birth date, and address to do a welfare check. The police were going to do a welfare check and then call me back. It was a few hours before they phoned me back. The officer I spoke to wanted to verify the information again using his full name, birth date, and address. The officer stated there was no information in the database, and they went to the home address I gave them and said the occupants there had never heard of Jason, and they stated that they'd lived in the home for more than 20 years. I told the officer that he put his home up for sale and asked if he was sure he went to the correct address. The officer told me he had, and the reason he called was to verify the information to ensure no mistakes were made. I ended up going to my local police and telling them what happened. They could only take an incident report, and the officer at my local police station suspected that maybe I was entangled in a scam. I ended up calling my friend, the one who doubted Jason, and we drove to the address of the restaurant. What we found was something very different. The address to the restaurant led us to a building, but it was a pizzeria Italian takeout place. We went inside to inquire with the staff, and I ended up speaking to the owner, who told me he has worked and owned the building since 1998. I now was more confused than ever and tried over and over to call Jason with no answer. My friend called Jason with her phone, and the call rang through and a man answered the phone. It didn't sound like Jason, but the man had the same sounding accent as Jason did. When my friend asked for Jason, the man hung up. We continued to call again and again, but no one would ever answer. I sent text after text, call after call, nothing. I had to go to my bank to alert them to what happened. They said the money transfer couldn't be reversed, even though I had little hope, but maybe somehow they could. They said the only thing they can suggest is that I close my account, reopen a new one with a new account number, in the event a scammer had obtained my information. They couldn't get my money back. I willingly had sent it, even though it was for a reason other than what I was led to believe. I did contact the bank of the man I sent the money to and explain the situation, and they said they would look into things, but I doubted this. I also called the money transfer service and let them know about the $200. They said they cannot get my money back as it was picked up a while ago, and they can only cancel the transaction if it hadn't been picked up yet. My friend played detective and searched for the man in Nigeria that I had sent the money to see if he was on social media. We couldn't find him, or if he was on there, his name was so common there that there were tons of profiles with that name. Jason vanished from my friends list, and when my friend looked him up online with his profile link, his profile name changed from Jason to Mary, and a female photo was there where Jason once was. So Jason, or whoever he was, had blocked me and then changed the profile. I've come to admit that I was scammed badly. I was both financially scammed and emotionally scammed by a man who said he lived and breathed for me and loved me so much. Since this event, I've stopped joining groups, stopped going into groups. I took my friends button off my profile and decided to admit I was scammed in more ways than one. It's been a while now since this happened, and I'm still raw with hurt over everything. The financial loss was a huge one, but the emotional toll it took on my self-esteem and heart was far worse. And we'd like to thank this lady for sharing her story. Unfortunately, scammers play with your heart, they play with your emotions before they take your money. No matter how sweet, how kind, how loving someone is online, if they ask you for money, never give it.